All right, so next up we have Alex Talcott, CEO of the new Constellation Capital Companies, and he's going to be speaking on crypto freedom, order, and identity. Alex Talcott lives in Durham and has taught business law and finance courses at Paul College, including a fintech institution seminar. He works as a corporate counsel and policy analyst for private equity companies and ventures he owns in technology and real estate. He's the executive producer of the recently launched NH-based Lexicon Crypto Show podcast. He is known as AT to his students and is a graduate of Dartmouth College and Notre Dame Law School. Before we start, we want to thank the NHSBDC for sponsoring this session. The New Hampshire Small Business Development Center is the leading resource for business advising and education for small businesses in New Hampshire. Their advising team delivers highly individualized, confidential business advising to small businesses in any industry and at any state of growth at no charge across the state. The SBDC also offers e-courses and an online workshop series for businesses. The NHSBDC is an outreach program of UNH Paul College. They're funded through a cooperative agreement with the U.S. Small Business Administration, the state of New Hampshire through the Department of Business and Economic Affairs, the University of New Hampshire, and the private sector. Please welcome Alex.
Can you pass these back? Can you pass these? Thank you. All right, I'm starting out by passing out business cards because my number one goal for today is to hire 1 to 3 of you. There's a lot going on. I might quibble with Mike. I think the metaverse is here in a way, and I need your help. So if the cards don't make it all the way to the back, please look me up on LinkedIn and other socials. On my next slide, that'll come up at the very end. You'll have that. Please reach out, and please include a message when you reach out. That's one of the things that I think is really missing in social media, and sometimes the desktop as compared to the mobile version of LinkedIn makes it too easy to just click that connect without the personalized invite. So please give me a heads up about where you interacted with me. So we'll talk today on crypto freedom, order, and identity. Anytime you have to give a presentation in college, you can always just do it on freedom and order, because there's a certain amount of innovation and exploration and wild, wild west that's going on in a certain amount of like order and safety that we would all benefit from. So that sort of tension that exists is something that you can apply to almost any topic. So if you're struggling for that topic title for a presentation, freedom and order is a good one to throw up there. And I added identity. Identity is not a word that I thought that I would use in a presentation. It used to be kind of like a PC-like term. It's kind of like political and charged almost. If you were caught up with identity, you were an entitled millennial of some kind. But I've discovered identity through community, and I'll be glad to touch upon that. If I were to give these remarks in a few months, I would probably cross out identity and throw in art, because there's an art application to crypto that's really important to my business right now and something that I'm just really, really excited about. Hey, you guys. That's a reference for Mike. So hey, you guys is from a character in Goonies, the movie. And I found myself thinking about that movie when Mike mentioned it and its connection to crypto. Because in that movie, the search for One-Eyed Willie's gold, it's the journey, not the destination, and the relationships that are built. That sounds nice, right? But no, the money does matter, because when the gold is found, the mortgage gets paid off, spoiler alert, and the families live happily ever after. So that's an important thing, to think about crypto and cryptocurrency as a means to an end for the most part. I think that's the best way to think about it, as something that I think you all will enjoy. I intentionally went with crypto, not cryptocurrency, because some people really get hung up on the currency aspects of crypto. And it's much more than a medium of exchange. So I think it's much more important that this conference is about the metaverse and Web3. I see crypto as an incidental part of it. It's really just like oxygen in some ways. I want to thank Holly for the introduction, and she's a great example of why we're here today. I told her I would put her on the spot in a non-teasy way, but the one part of my introduction that she chose to confirm with me was the pronunciation of the word fintech. And fintech is financial technology. Nowadays, pretty much any word with tech after it is a thing. I do some work in CRE-tech, which is commercial real estate technology. There's prop tech for property technology. There's insure tech for insurance. I'm a cat daddy. I love cats. Cat tech, I don't know if that's a thing, but if I said it with a straight face when I'm traveling out west, people are like, oh yeah, right on. That's what a lot of people in the metaverse say, things like that. And you have to think about fintech as something that really predates cryptocurrency. Some people are learning about the notion of fintech concomitantly with learning about crypto for the first time, but financial technology has been around forever. Some of the financial technology that comes just before me, so our introductory speaker talked about 1983. I'm 1982. Hi, I'm 40. And that's really relevant because my high school graduation class was the class of 2000. So I'm an entitled millennial who was told from kindergarten that, ooh, you're the class of 2000, that is the millennium. You're the bridge to the future. So some of these topics have really been ingrained in my consciousness for a really, really long time. But some of the most significant fintech that I passed right when I walked into this building came in the 1970s, just before I was born. The M&T ATM that we have just outside of the MUB. My guess is it's probably a little bit clumsy right now because the transition from People's United to M&T has been pretty rough. But in general, we trust ATMs. My parents, it was a transition to trust ATMs. They didn't know if making a cash deposit would be like putting money in some sort of a paper shredder. And I would invite those of you who are interested in, well, heck, how did we get mass adoption and comfort level with ATM machines? To take a look at the history that is grounded in law and insurance. I say that because some of you folks in the audience might not be the hip marketing types. You might be lawyer nerds like me. And I'm a lawyer by training. I really like contracts, not just smart contracts that exist on the blockchain, but all kinds of contracts between people that are communication tools and build trust and allow wonderful things to happen. Holly's willingness to be vulnerable and to share that she didn't know the pronunciation of that word took me back to studying science in high school, where I did all this work on a paper once, I thought, on acid rain and basecations, because ATIONS in English is usually ations or something. No, it was about base cat ions. And I didn't know that after working on a project for a couple weeks because I did not have the occasion to just say that new terminology out loud in a group. So I would really invite us during the networking sessions to ask questions, to stumble over words and vocabulary in the spirit of learning. That's one of the best things you can do. I also encountered yesterday some unfamiliarity with fintech terminology. I was talking with one of our later speakers today who mentioned a company called StormX, which remind me that I was watching a StormX sponsored poker tournament. StormX allows you to do online shopping and to get rewards in cashback in the form of crypto. And I was watching the poker tournament because a Web3 friend of mine was competing in it. And there have been Saturday Night Live sketches about the play-by-play people who are just not the smartest dudes in the room. And they almost like tease themselves for being provincial and not knowing what's going on and not being as athletic as the athletes or not studying as much in college as the student athletes did. They had a really hard time with the word DeFi, D-E-F-I, decentralized finance. They didn't know whether to say DeFi, they didn't really know what to do. And that's okay, they stumbled through it, it's all right. And in some ways, the idea of defying is actually kind of funny when you think about the idea of freedom and order. In what ways does decentralized finance defy what is safe, what is accepted? Is it going beyond current regulations, or is it outside the scope of regulations that currently exist? I'm working on a project right now called Crypto Regs, which is an in-the-bag regulatory study that is industry-friendly, that's trying to bring together founders in the Web3 space, regulators, and lawyers, accountants, other professional service folks to create this safe space for the good guys and gals and others who want to get regulation right, who want to bridge the idea of freedom and order in a way that is really, really positive. I have to say that freedom is the presumption. That is the starting point. That is always going to be the first word, especially when you're talking about businesses in the United States. When I have some of my most harebrained ideas and I talk about them with friends and family, the most common question I get is, can you do that? And the default answer is always yes. Absent a really good reason to, that has some likely consequences behind it, yeah, you can probably go for it. And that's a really beautiful thing about starting businesses in this country. I really enjoyed Mike's myths. 1 to 3 are ones that I'd love to have a yeah but conversation with you about. But myth 4 is one that I entirely agree with. So some of your conception of virtual reality as repackaged being the fundamental aspects of Web3 or Web3 enabled by a buy-in by way of cryptocurrency is absolutely not true. And part of why it's not true is because crypto-enabled participation in Web3, which can also be, I agree, Web2 entree into different experiential things. There are all sorts of things right now that accept Ethereum as well as credit debit card. It's much more than the visual. I think the overemphasis on the visual in the metaverse is absolutely nuts. Because I think about a ride that I went on with my kids a few years ago. And that ride was Avatar at Disney World. I am really excited to get back to Disney World. I am really excited for the long-awaited sequel to that movie. And spoiler alert on that ride in Disney World, part of what you experience is not just the flying sensation, which is, I just got goosebumps, is the flying sensation of that, but they also hit you with just the right amount of air and just the right amount of sprinkle to really feel that you're interacting with a rainforest sort of a setting. I am really, really into senses. And I encourage my students, when you're trying to immerse yourself in the metaverse or anything in your study, the 2 things that you can do that are best are ask who, what, when, where, why, and maybe how questions, and also think about you're engaging your multiple intelligences, whether you're using your different senses to have sticky experiences with things that you're learning about. I would recommend that if you don't go work for me, and I mentioned that I'm very seriously looking to hire some of you today, and I'll hit you up by way of FinTech with a signing bonus. If you don't come work for me, you should go work for Forrester, because they have a perspective. I really wanted to gear my remarks today towards what is usable for this audience, because I've talked about crypto in audiences that are dominated by senior citizens who come to me afterwards and say, okay, that was pretty good. How do I get some of that? And the answer is like, well, maybe you don't. You definitely need a holistic financial advisor or more of a decision about that. I'm going to be giving a talk that follows up a book review that I write of this book for lawyers who in New Hampshire are way behind on technology. We have a lot of solo practitioners and really small firms. They're really, really bad on understanding technology or basic cybersecurity. But the idea of working for a company or becoming a professional who has a perspective is one of the best things you can do. There are a few words that are like no-no words for me that I'll explain as we go. One of the first words that comes to mind is should. Should is a normative kind of question. And so I don't think it's appropriate for me to talk to an audience that I don't know individually to tell you which cryptocurrency you should buy. I think that's a real problem with a lot of mainstream finance. If you put on CNBC, I don't know who their audience is. They'll talk about whether Apple is a buy, a hold, or a sell. And if people ever ask me, should I buy Apple? It's the same question as, should I buy Litecoin? It's like, I don't know. I don't know what else you have. I don't know what your goals are. So there's no one cryptocurrency that I think you're missing the ride on if you don't already have some, because you all have individually different financial experiences. One of the best things that you can do is gain enough experience and work with a company where you're put in a position to take some of those stands, to get to a point where you almost make self-evident to your clients or self-evident to yourself in terms of bets you're going to make without using the word should. That's actually a rule of the Wall Street Journal. If you ever see the word should in an editorial of the Wall Street Journal, please email me, because I had the pleasure of interning for them when I was 20 years old in Hong Kong, and that was rule number 1. Never use the word should. You don't want to tell your audience what they should do. You got to make it really clear on the basis of your facts and your overall argument. It's really difficult to get to a point to know when you have a perspective. I remember when I was a freshman in college and I met a really smart senior. I was a really opinionated high school kid, and I shut up freshman year because this guy just knew so much more than I did about government. It took some time until I felt comfortable to kind of realize that, hey, maybe I do know a little bit more about this topic than other people. You all, by virtue of being here, I'm pleased to say, consider yourselves relatively early. You are easily in the top half of 1% of informed people on the matters of Web3 by virtue of how far we've already gone today, believe it or not. One question that I encourage you to ask us, for those of us who invest in cryptocurrency, for those of us who invest in crypto and Web3 businesses, is how we or our companies make money. I feel like that's one of the elephants in the room. Yeah, but how do you make money? Are you buying low and selling high? Who are you getting to pay you to give advice about this? What are the verbs of what you do in any given day? Like, are you sitting? Are you walking? Are you looking at a screen? Like, what are you doing? That's a really important thing to demystify, and that's something that I'm very sensitive to if you are a first-generation college student, for example, or if you don't come from an environment where people work inside. It's really easy. I think about the Pease Trade Port in Portsmouth. I used to teach around there. If you take a walk around there and you see these kind of like glassy windows, like it's really hard to tell when you're a student, like, wait, what is happening in there? Like, what are they doing exactly? Are they responding to emails? Are they taking phone calls? Are they on spreadsheets? Getting as real as possible in terms of what your interaction with crypto or the crypto industry is going to be. Those are really good questions to ask and really good things to explore. One of the most important vocabulary terms in crypto and Web3 is IRL. Does anyone know what IRL stands for? In real life. So you are doing it. Congratulations. IRL, that's what it's about. There are some people when they think about the metaverse and engaging with crypto, they think that they're doing something sort of under the table. They think that it's a place for like loners. I actually think that Ethereum in particular is enabling a true delivery of what social media was supposed to be all about. It was supposed to be social. Not all things in the advancement of technology are a one-way direction. I disagree with an author who's an alumnus of my alma mater, undergraduate, that societies really do progress in one direction. That no society with the way he says it, no society with wood shoes has ever, with leather shoes has ever gone back to wood or whatever. I think that's kind of clumsy because in my own social media experience, I remember AOL chat rooms. America Online, which used to come in CD-ROM abilities to get started, used to come in the mail. I mean, it was like, you know, drug dealers like get you hooked with a little something first. Well, maybe you don't know about drug dealers, but AOL was really trying to get you hooked by sending you those CD-ROMs that you'd plug in your computer and get introduced to the idea of being online. And for the teenagers who were the adopters of that in the mid-1990s, their favorite and most used feature of America Online was the chat room. And here's another like 3-letter thing, and I'll be interested if some of the older adults in the room knows what this means. ASL. What does ASL stand for? Age, sex, loc, because it was a flirty teenager tool with like, hey, who am I chatting with? Where are you from? Not in a skeevy way, but in a way that like people were really reaching out and trying to make social interactions with other folks. There are certain aspects of AOL and Craigslist that have just stopped. Web3 is enabling different groups to find themselves and find one another. I really do like to riff off of what is prior discussed or prior presented. So another one for Mike, he mentioned that winter is coming in Web3. If winter is coming, it's a wonderful opportunity for asymmetric warfare. And I'm not talking about hacking other companies. I'm talking about the idea that sometimes the little guy beats the big guy. Sometimes the underdog beats the big dog. And not despite being small, but because they're small. Malcolm Gladwell has talked about this. David beats Goliath, not in spite of being small, but because he has the element of surprise. You have the element surprise. You have the ability to do some new and different things in crypto and Web3. If you are not working at present for a large organization who requires you to be in a particular office at a particular time, or tied to your phone or your laptop at a particular time in a particular approved place, it is a wonderful time to invest in yourselves and to engage in some professional development. COVID was the best thing that ever happened for my private equity career, because I was able to make my own choices about when I would hop on a plane and go meet with other people who were willing to have me. And I really felt like it was a time for certain people in private equity to get ahead. So that's my wish for you, that you feel like you can get ahead, even if you're small and don't have large organization affiliations at present. We had some discussion about some of those large companies and how they've interacted with NFTs or other user experiences. My personal story in terms of my first warm feeling with a large company in anything related to crypto was with Macy's, the department store. I used to hate talking about department stores with my students when I would teach Intro to Financial Management or certain classes that would sound in accounting. Retail is really easy in textbooks to explain financial reporting and stuff, but a lot of us don't go to department stores anymore and don't go to malls. But Macy's is meaningful for me, not for the shopping experience, even though I think I got this belt at the one at like Fox Run, but it's the parade. The Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade is one of my favorite cultural experiences. I grew up in New York. I used to go to the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade with my family. There was one year we rented a hotel room so we would have an amazing view of the balloons. There was one time that we went to watch the balloons being blown up at 4 a.m. That was just like a really exciting thing I got goosebumps again. I miss my mom. So that was a really, really special thing for me. So when I saw Thanksgiving 2021, that Macy's was going to be giving away limited edition NFTs, celebrating balloons of that parade, that was the first time for me that I was like, I want one of those. I didn't really know why I wanted one, but I had some FOMO. I did not want to miss out having that and having the opportunity to maybe show the NFT or to explain to my parents, hey, what you did in my childhood, that was such a special in real life experience that I want to preserve it in this new and strange kind of a way. I was really bummed when I did not get one of the original 9,500 that were released. They gave out 9,500 to celebrate 95 years in business. They actually did 9,510. 10 of them were all for charity. And the all for charity ones that were slightly more decorative, the current going rate for them, if you go on Suite or OpenSea, is about $28,000. But that's $28,000 that the buyers were like, oh, it's all to the Make-A-Wish Foundation. So it may not have been the same experience with the parade or the same enjoyment of the art that I have. So I was able to buy the one that I have on Suite. I don't mind sharing that I paid $49.99 for it. And if you want to buy one of the Macy's balloon parade ones, the next two cheapest ones on the open market right now are $150 and $450. So by that measure, I'm like, I got a good deal. But if you tell a naysayer, they're like, I don't know that you did. It's kind of like when my mom would go to Ocean State Job Lot and be like, I got a sale, this was 20% off. Yeah, but it's 20% off something that you didn't need. I at least had the experience of knowing that I really wanted it almost to the point of need. Other than NFTs, let's talk about some specific cryptocurrencies. Which one should you have? Which one are you most likely to have? I told you that I wouldn't answer that. But in terms of the order piece, outside of a number of regulatory debates that are happening right now, in terms of who has jurisdiction over some of this stuff, is it the SEC, Securities and Exchange Commission? Is it CFTC? Is it the commodities land? That's being sorted out as we speak. There are very, very few members of Congress who understand this stuff at all. Retiring Senator Toomey of Pennsylvania is one of the few who's remotely hip to technology. The House Financial Services Committee is playing a large part in figuring out some of the order piece in terms of regulation. But order comes from more than just the government. We have a sense of what is orderly and what is okay and what is safe on the basis of other trusted institutions. And we are at a time in American history of very low trust in institutions. Ever since Watergate, Americans stopped trusting the presidency. America has stopped trusting the mainstream media. America has stopped trusting the United States Supreme Court. So we don't have a lot of great institutions that we trust right now. Do you know what institution is currently the most trusted in the United States? Small businesses. Small businesses and small business owners are companies that we feel comfortable with. And there are some companies that start out as small businesses that become big businesses, and not all small businesses exist to do that. But those that become big are often supported by SBDC, in the Small Business Administration. I didn't know my session was sponsored by them, but take a look at the Small Business Administration. They support companies that have maybe some more employees or revenues than you would expect. But some of those businesses that are small businesses or are innovative, and we have a feeling or an association with the CEOs, I think about PayPal as an example of one. Peter Thiel's kind of famous. Elon Musk is certainly famous. His name hasn't come up yet. What he has to do with his acquisition of Twitter and what that might mean for Dogecoin, let's talk about that over coffee. But PayPal, which he moved on from, was a really important piece of order for my family in introducing crypto to my spouse. My wife is an extremely intelligent person. She majored in economics in college. She got better grades than I did. She graduated 1/100th of a point ahead of me. Her grades went down as much as mine went up when we started dating, so I literally sucked her brain. But even somebody who worked for Goldman Sachs and is really, really like smart, she hasn't been like as hip to this space. And so what we did in terms of holding crypto for the first time as a family in our PayPal wallets, we were like, oh, PayPal, that legitimizes it. PayPal is a company that we feel comfortable with. So if they're engaged with crypto, then it's fine. More recently, Fidelity, which is a major hire of UNH students, has introduced crypto on its platform 2 years ahead of schedule. It's a pretty conservative company that isn't always ahead of the curve, but they've beat their own planning because they see how important it is. But PayPal, not all cryptocurrencies were available. It was Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin, and Bitcoin Cash. So I don't mind sharing that I went for Bitcoin and Ethereum, left out Litecoin, and for my wife's wallet, Bitcoin Cash, because I wanted to have her have a more sense of, okay, this is actually usable to buy stuff. As a practical matter, I think Bitcoin Cash is a fraud, and I can talk with you more about why over the break. So that would be one that I would say to avoid at all costs. I'd like to close with the idea of identity and how I think about myself. I think about myself as a father, as a teacher, as a lawyer. There are different ways that I think about myself, but I'm also a quirky dude. And social media was supposed to be a place where you can find your fellow quirky people. It was where the Dungeons and Dragons people meet. It's where people who like really have opinions about the next cool bathing suits can share ideas. My not so guilty pleasure, I feel like this is a coming out, I'm really into pro wrestling. I mean, maybe it's because I'm an 80s kid and Hulk Hogan was like, you know, synonymous with America and I'm a patriotic kind of guy. But that was a real big interest of mine. And I have found a NFT community that is a utility NFT. An NFT where it's not just an investment in a wrestler depiction on that art, on that digital collectible, which is how Reddit is marketing it right now, but a community that is kind of a fan club, and with it comes certain perks and the opportunity to meet different people. We are meeting one another IRL in real life, and we're also meeting one another over a few platforms that I want to highlight for you. So if you're not already on LinkedIn, go on LinkedIn because a lot of amazing conversations about the order regulatory side of things are happening. And there are opportunities for those accountants in the house or those people who might want to audit or do compliance, huge opportunities to interact with people on LinkedIn. On Twitter, you absolutely have to be there, specifically for the Twitter Spaces. The Web3 community is having conversations in Twitter Spaces where you are having an out loud chat. A lot of my friends in crypto and Web3 are on the West Coast. It's meaning that my hours are adjusting. I'm staying up later to talk with my friends in Las Vegas and California and such. But Twitter Spaces are conversation that you can jump in and you can stay listener. You don't have to ask for speaker privileges. Listen in on some of that. It's a strange space, but I highly recommend Twitter Spaces. Instagram, some pretty good visuals on the NFT space, but a decent amount of fake news. And Discord. Discord is really, if you're a programmer, it's a place that you have to be. If you're a developer, but you might want to join specific Discord environments if you find a real community. If you find a type of art that you really like, if you find a group of hobbyists that you really like. I don't know if there's a UNH one, but the University of Florida has a Gator NFT community that exists on Discord, and they're very, very rah-rah go Gators. Where's Derek? Yeah, can we start like the UNH Discord thing? Someone's working on it? Okay, if I don't get invited, I'll be embarrassed and feel left out. See, I got some FOMO too, thank you. Derek's an example of someone who I consider fluent in this stuff, and people are at all levels of fluency in it. So please, I invite you to ask questions now, to ask questions over the break, and thank you all for being here.
Hi.
Hi.
Okay, so you were talking about not using the word should. What are your thoughts about news sources telling individuals what you need to do? In marketing, I feel like catchy clickbait headlines use the word need, like you need my product to make your lifestyle better. So what's the difference, if there is one, between should and need, besides one being more definitive than the other?
Can you just drop that mic? Because that was a hot question. That's awesome. Yeah, I will put some of the blame for like the kind of blog culture of financial reporting on the editors, not on the reporters and the individual writers. I know people who are freelance writers. There aren't a lot of like salaried reporters. Sometimes you get what you pay for and you don't get what you don't pay for. I remember looking at potentially going into a number of things after college, and working for a newspaper was one of them because I had that experience with the Wall Street Journal. But I took a look at if you could really hit the jackpot and be a reporter for like the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal, very, very rare. But even if I could do that right out of college, I would make less money than I would if I were teaching kindergarten in the Bronx. That's just where it's at. So some of that sloppiness comes from the fact that we're not necessarily getting the best and the brightest in the media. Some of the hosts on cable who you see are multimillionaires who act very, very folksy. They're very, very wealthy. But short of that, we have undercompensated, in my opinion, reporters. And a lot of those things that you see are really just the work of the editors who are more full-time and are salaried and are looking for the clickbait. There are a lot of times I'll read an article and the headline doesn't really match the article. And I'm like, that's the darn editor. You know, the reporter is the one who's doing the real work, the real inverted pyramid, traditional news reporting. And then the editor is going for the clickbait, telling us, 10 great NFTs to buy for 2022. I cannot stand that stuff. If you Google my last name, Talcott, Talcott, and then the letters REIT, R-E-I-T, Real Estate Investment Trust, I've been doing a lot more in crypto than real estate with the Fed rising interest rates so much. It's no longer as cost effective for me to borrow money for stuff that's less profitable. I have to go for the home runs where it's not a lot of upfront costs to muse on these ideas. But take a look at an article that I wrote about real estate investment trusts where I really throw under the bus what is supposed to be a normal person friendly online publication, and they're still telling you, the REITs that you got to invest in. And I took a look back to see the performance of them, and I was like, they did not even perform very well, and you had no business giving advice to an audience that you don't know intimately in the first place. So I utterly resent those headlines, but I recognize that the blame is not all put on the person who has the byline. Let's go, D-Rock, stump me.
Hey, AT. All right, so I know I've talked a little about Andrew Hemingway about, trends over the past, 5 years, but also looking ahead 5-10 years. We've seen like Solana, we've seen like Ethereum, we've seen people being like, oh, here's the next big thing. What are the trends you're looking at when it comes to crypto or NFTs?
I had a nightmare last night about Solana. Like, that's what's so weird about my life. Like, I don't worry about like normal things. I worry about abnormal things. And my wife worries about the normal things, which is why my kids are beautiful and well fed. But yeah, Solana, I'm not entirely on board with. Ethereum, like, I'm an Ethereum true believer. I love Ethereum. Like, that's why I'm like holding this book like the Bible. So like, I would recommend this book, Vitalik Buterin, Proof of Stake, The Making of Ethereum and the Philosophy of Blockchains. Here's another example of, he's a smart enough guy, he didn't come up with this title. There's no way that he did, because the content of this book would put the philosophy of blockchains first. His overall philosophy about the blockchain and freedom in order is really a remarkable part of this book. So I am on the Ethereum bandwagon. I like the idea that it's not just about digital collectibles. It's really any contract that you can put on the blockchain. So I see so many possibilities there. That is a space where I'm spending a lot of time. A lot of the stuff that I'm building is being built in Ethereum world as opposed to any other. So I'm comfortable saying not necessarily investing in the currency, but using it to build other companies, which is what I'm much more interested in. I see crypto less as something to speculate in as an investment, and more something to leverage towards building other things if you're so inclined. And the next 5 to 10 years, I'm glad you said at least to 10, because usually when people ask you, oh, the next 5 years, like 5-year plans, that's like Stalinist. That's not a very capitalist way to think about the future. So I always go out of my way to avoid the 5-year paradigm. I do 3 just because, yeah.
So I'm curious to know, how long do you believe it will take for cryptocurrency to be legitimized, and what prevents people from making joke coins as a method of scamming to like basically steal your investment when it becomes a more generalized market that's interactive?
Yeah, if you look at the market cap of currencies, I mean, there really are big players. It is just, Bitcoin and Ethereum running away with it. So I think it's very, very likely that those will have some serious staying power, and some of the other ones may be speculated in for different reasons, but it may be the sort of thing, if you look at actual participation, engagement, and use of the currency, it really will be a few that are dominant. If you think about the credit card market, there's a handful that are dominant. Like, of Discover, Visa, American Express, American Express sometimes is like left out. But if you have a MasterCard, Discover, Visa, 2 of the many, you can transact. So I think if you have a couple cryptocurrencies and US dollars, you can transact.
Hi. Okay. You said that people trust small companies more than entities like the Supreme Court. So do you believe that organizations that support small companies will urge them to utilize crypto so it's more mainstream?
It's an enormous opportunity for trusted brands to legitimize things. So for me, like Macy's is an example of one of those companies that helped mainstream things. Walmart is such a dominant company, Meta. But I am very, very interested in connecting more small businesses to be innovative in this space, because they touch different trust communities. So like one local New Hampshire business that I'm talking with, and I'm gonna put you on the spot, Emmett, because we haven't connected on the phone yet. Emmett Soldati owns the Teetotaler in Somersworth, an LGBTQ-friendly tea shop that has delicious baked goods and is also a performance space. There's a new location in Concord now, which has quite a bit more space. It attracts a certain alternative community that does seem to have more open-mindedness about alternative currencies. We've seen remarkable comfort levels in the African-American community with cryptocurrencies as a marginalized culture that has been unbanked for a lot of reasons. So if banks are not coming to minority communities, at some point those communities are going to stop rushing to banks, and they're more inclined to appreciate financial technologies. So I think that there are small business, social justice, and big business things that will conspire to mainstream it. It will be no one thing. Almost everything that happens in business in the world is the result of calculus. So when you think about Dogecoin, like, did awesome yesterday, but it's not a binary. Is it going to go down? There are always, I can talk with you about it like a pie chart of the likelihood that, yeah, you might think that it would zig, but for these reasons, it zags. But those kinds of institutions all participating in it. And we also have central banks, for example, by the way, that are wholly adopting different coins.
I just had a question about the central bank digital currency that the Fed and ECB was talking about possibly introducing that and like functioning as legal tender, but like on the other hand, the IMF warning governments to currently accept cryptocurrencies. Do you think that is more likely to be introduced than already existing currencies like crypto to be adopted by governments?
That was a really, really good question. The only part that I didn't like about it was use the word just. You didn't just want to ask that. That is a very astute question. I didn't even get to talk about how much I hate the word they. That's another thing. Because there is no they, like you are they. And so you are they is actually connected to answering that question because at least in the United States, when we do things on the regulatory side of things, as opposed to the Congress and the presidential side of things, which is increasingly the case, more and more of rulemaking is done by administrative agencies, by our do-nothing Congress. So you will all have the opportunity by way of comment to influence that. That's a really underutilized thing, but one of my favorite laws in the United States, and I usually don't like laws, I like to have freedom and not too many laws, but the APA, the Administrative Procedures Act, allows all of us to weigh in on what should happen for a variety of different reasons. The United States by no means will be a first mover there just because we have hundreds of other countries who are looking for opportunities to make news. And I really like that competition, actually, in terms of central banking, in terms of what really makes a place business friendly or not. There are always commercials saying, start your business in Michigan, we're open for business. I can tell you firsthand, they're not in comparison to other states. Every city tries to be business friendly. Miami is an extremely crypto friendly city, which is among the reasons that I'm going to be there in early December. I don't know if I'm as inclined to go and visit the countries that are the first adopters on different legal tender aspects of things, because some of those countries just have such rampant inflation that it's going to take a whole lot more than that to make me want to start a business in Venezuela. Good. Do you want to have some coffee and talk